So now we will learn how to write a procedure corresponding to these two blocks instead of repeating these blocks over and over again for 8 times. So I'm going to take out this and remove this, and I'm going to use this as the main body of blocks from a procedure. So I'm going to go to built-in, then definitions, and then I'm going to select this procedure with argument. So what we are basically doing is I'm saying I'm going to create a set of blocks. I'm going to supply some info as an argument over here. So whenever I use this procedure, I'm going to supply some info that the blocks within this procedure can use. So I'm going to rename this procedure play note, and I'm going to go to this built-in definition and pick this name block, and I'm going to rename that as number. So what I'm basically saying is when I'm going to call this play note block, now notice even as soon as I dragged this procedure block, now if I go to my blocks and my definitions, I have a block called play note. So I'm basically creating a block. I'm defining a new block, and I'm going to put in other blocks inside this, and that's what is going to be executed whenever I use this new procedure block. So what I'm doing is I'm going to use this procedure block, and I'm going to supply it a value. The value is called an argument, and within this procedure we can use that value. Now, so the basic idea is I'm going to call this procedure block from within all these button.click blocks. So when button1.click calls this procedure, I'm going to supply the procedure play note a value 1. When button2.click calls this play note procedure, I'm going to supply it with a value 2. So depending on which button.click block is calling this play note block, it is going to receive either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and that value is going to be stored in this variable called number. So let's assume that button 1 is calling this play note procedure. So at that point, what we want to do is set the source file for this sound component to 1.wav. So now the way we can use this argument, which now contains the value 1, is we go to built-in text and drag this join, and then go to my blocks, my definitions, number, and put that as the first part of the text join, and in the second part I just add the text .wav. So now I'm going to remove this block, and then I just play that sound. So what we're basically saying is if button 1 calls this play note procedure, it's going to supply the value 1 as argument, and that argument is going to be stored in this variable number. So since button 1 is calling play note, we want to set the sound source file to 1.wav, so we can use the variable's value, which will be 1, append a .wav extension to that, use that text to set the sound file name properly, and then play that sound. So similarly, when button 2 is going to call this procedure, it's going to supply the value 2. So at that point, the number variable will have the value 2. So this block at that point is going to join the number 2 and .wav to create the file name 2.wav. And at that point, when sound is played, 2.wav's sound will be played. Now, so this way, since we are creating a procedure, we are kind of automating the process of figuring out what file name to play, and now when we add the third and the fourth button, we can just call the play note procedure with the proper number 3 or 4 and so forth. So this is how we can create the two buttons. We can keep on using the same method to add on to the two buttons and add the other 6 buttons to complete the xylophone.